Okay guys, I made a tutorial for CM1 because you guys kept asking for it. There will be a Google Drive link in the description. Go ahead and download the CM1.zip. And once you have it on your computer, you can extract all. And then once it's extracted here, you can grab this guy right here and open it up. And you'll see all of this stuff. Don't worry about it. I know it looks complicated, but it's not. When you download it, I'm pretty sure it won't have this frame here, but that is from some of my old stuff that I was working on. You can delete it if it's there. Now, this CM1 is pre-compiled, and it does have some limits. You will still be able to do cool simulations. You'll be able to get tornadoes. You just can't do super high resolution with an insane amount of grid points because this is a 32-bit version and it has some limits. But this video is just going to go over this one because this is super easy to set up and it can run right out of the box. But if you want the Linux version or WSL version of CM1 that you have to compile yourself, I might make a separate tutorial for that. But for now, we're just going to continue with this. Now for now, we have a bunch of name lists in here that I have set up for you guys, all custom. Basically, if you really don't know what you're doing with the name list, which is basically just all of CM1's settings, it should look like this once you open it. And just a bunch of settings. It does look pretty complicated, but it is not if you get the hang of it. But if you really don't want to mess with that, there's a bunch of preset ones in here. So you want to do a 100 meter sim, you can open it up, copy it, and put it in here. Now this CM1 comes with a good sounding. If you want to run your own soundings, you can. You just got to use Sharpie. That is pretty annoying to set up, and it's really broken. So for now, there's a link in the description for a Discord server that has a bunch of people that know about CM1 and a bunch of soundings that are in there you can use. And I recommend going in there if you really need help, but I will try to answer as many comments as I can. So yeah, this sounding will work fine how it is. It always produces a tornado if you're at a high enough resolution. So yeah. Now to run this, you can run it right now. Just double click the exe, but it is better to do it this way. You want to open PowerShell. You want to click on the bar right here, okay, and then Control C, and then CD, and then you can paste it, and now you'll be in the path of this folder, so you can run this. Then you want to run this guy right here. I'll leave this in the description. All the commands will be in the description, so you guys can just copy and paste them super easily. So you can click enter, and it should start running like this. Now, you know it's working if it's doing this. Sometimes it'll be slow on your computer, but CM1 is pretty RAM heavy. It'll pretty much run on any CPU, but the better the CPU, the faster it is. Now to stop it, you can just do Control C, like this, or you can just close it completely. But that's how simple it is to run. If you want a custom name list, you can change it yourself. You can go down here, and this is all the important stuff down here. You can see your inner resolution, your outer resolution, your domain size, all that is here. This is your Y and X. Now, Y is actually side to side instead of up and down like in video games. So you need to keep that in mind. Z is actually up and down. So say you want to change this resolution. Right now it's on 200 meter. So the grid boxes in the simulation are going to be 200 meter, like real meters. So say you want to make it 100 meter. You just do that. You got to make sure both of them are the exact same. If you want to tweak this as well, you can. This is the outer domain. So it's like a box inside of a box. The inner one is going to be the smaller one. So this guy right here is your inner domain. So the inner one is 15 kilometers, which is really small. You usually don't want this to be how it is. It's just for the testing name list. And I messed them up a bit while making them. So really, if you want to run the name lists, make sure this is on at least 20 or 35 kilometers, because when you have it under, let's say, 40 kilometers, the storm can be a little bit less realistic on how it produces tornadoes and how it forms and dies. So realistically, I would put it on 30 kilometers if your CPU is not the best or if you don't have too much RAM, but 30 kilometers is overall good. But if you really want to go more realistic, I would do 50 kilometers or 40. You could always do 35. That's what I would do to test it. Now, this is your outer domain. I would keep it at 100 kilometers unless you go tinier. I would probably go to 80 or even 70 kilometers at this inner domain size. So for now, just keep it at 100. But this outer guy right here is your resolution for the outer domain. I usually keep it really high. This is unrealistically high, To be honest, I would probably keep it at 1,000 or 500 because really you just want your storm on the inner domain and still have a little bit of room if it like sneaks out a little bit. And the anvil is obviously going to go past 35 kilometers, so it has some room out there. It's just not going to look good out in that outer domain. So keep that in mind. You really want to keep your storm in that inner domain because having it in low resolution can affect it quite a lot. Now down here is your vertical settings. So it's on stretch 2, which basically you set a top resolution and a bottom resolution, and it stretches the grid points so it fits inside that resolution all the way to the top. So this is 18 kilometers tall. You really don't want to cut off your storm. You can cut off some of the overshooting tops, but I always like to have it at like 20 kilometers or 19 kilometers. 19 kilometers absolute minimum to not cut off your storm. Sometimes you can have overshooting tops that hit that. Usually always keep it at 19 kilometers. STR bot, this is your starting height for your bottom resolution. So right now, see this DZ bot right here? This is telling me that those 60-meter grid points are going to go up 0.5 kilometers. And then after those 1.5 kilometers, it's going to start stretching into lower resolution. Now, if you want the absolute best quality for your storm, I would turn this off to 0. But right now, it's best to use 2 for starting off. So what you really want to do is make sure this guy down here is the same as this or this. But you really want to make sure that is set to your main resolution. So the DZ top, this is just your resolution at the very top of the domain. You can change it, but really to save on performance or RAM and stuff, you guys can set this to like 700. And then once you go up to the top, make sure your NZ is either lower than 100. If you go too low, it'll crash. And that's, you just gotta turn this guy up until it doesn't crash, or just keep it at 100. But the more you have for stretching on vertical, it will look a little bit higher quality. But this also takes up a lot of RAM too. So once you've changed your stuff down here, you can go ahead and save it and open your PowerShell and do the exact same thing. Once you run it, it's going to give you an error. Now this error is very important because you have to basically take this number it gives you. So it says the NX it should be 389. Now come up here, and I know it just says NX, but you have to change NY as well. So you change both of these guys and you're going to run it again. Now it might give you the same error. See, yes, it did right here. It probably means I have to go to 390 or 380, 388. So either one higher or one lower than it says. And it was one higher in this case. So it should run. Obviously, see, this one's running a little bit slower because instead of 200 meter, it's now 300 and a lot bigger of a domain. But usually I let these run overnight. But for the lower resolutions like 200 meter, 300 meter, 150 maybe, you can finish those in a few hours. But again, if you want to stop it, just do Control C or click the X and you can delete this guy right here, or all the frames that it produces. Now another little thing here that is important is restarting from like a save point in case you stop it and you want to stop it because it takes up a lot of resources and you want to play a game or something. Now what you can do is stop it, but you have to make sure your restart files are going to show up because in the name list right here we have something called time frequency, and that basically tells the simulation to step 30 times each frame. So for like animations and stuff, that's okay. But the higher the time frequency, the bigger steps into the future each frame is going to do. So say you have it set to 1, it's still going to take a long time to produce the frame, a little bit less usually, but that frame is still going to be the same size as a frame that steps like 100 times into the simulation instead of 1. And realistically, for your first sim, I would set it to like 30 or 10 as minimum. But just take the lower the number here, you're pretty much going to end up taking up more storage because that means more frames to get to the destination that you want it to get to. But I would let this sim run till time like 6,000 max, maybe 7,000. But by then, usually the storm is done producing tornadoes. Now you can see the restart frequency right here. This guy's pretty important because it relies on your time frequency. If I set this guy to 50 time frequency, I need to make 2 frames before I can make a restart file. Now this restart file takes up a lot more space than a regular frame. So I usually do like 10 frames to 1 restart file. If you stop that simulation when you have a restart file, you can go down here and turn on IRST right here, this guy, and then you plug in the RST number right here. So say you're on your second restart file, then you put in a number 2. So that's pretty simple. Don't worry about all these other settings for now. This is just really beginner stuff. For now, I'm going to move on to using Visit and Vapor to visualize the data that CM1 outputs. Alright, once you're done with everything here and you can change your resolution fine, you know what you're doing, simulation works, you can go ahead and go in the description, click the second link, it should be Visit, and it should bring you here. And then you can click on latest release, and then this guy should be the latest right here. And then make sure you use Windows 11 right here. Now if you're on Windows 10, I'm pretty sure they have one here somewhere, but for now just use the Windows 11 one. Once you have it downloaded, go ahead and open it up. It should look like this once you open it up. It is going to flashbang you, but you can change that under the Appearance tab right here. To test this, I would go into your simulation once it's running, and once there's a few frames, at least more than one frame. It works with one frame, it's just it groups them together easier that way. I have this simulation right here, it has a lot of frames. I'm gonna go ahead and open it in here. So you can go ahead, click open, and I'm gonna go and click this until I find my directory. You can also, if you don't want to click through this, go to your folder with all the frames in it, click and copy to the bar and paste it in here. And you can see all the frames will be in here. It should be this first one, CM1 out.nc, and then click OK. It should load in. Sometimes it'll take a little longer than usual, but the slider will show all your frames. Obviously, you won't have this many frames when you first start, but you can let it go pretty long. Now to add all the cool stuff, this is how to add 2D stuff. So go down to pseudo color and add DBZ and add Vinterp as well. So this will be your reflectivity, this will be your velocity. So you can go ahead and uncheck this down here, make sure this is unchecked, very important. Then right click, operators, and make sure you pick slice under slicing. Now double click your slice, switch it to Z-axis, %, and then uncheck this guy if you don't want it to be 2D, because usually you want to see your storm over top of it, but you can always check this again if you want it to be. But if this is checked, you cannot have anything 3D in your scene or it will just go crazy. So you can go ahead and click draw, and it should look like this. It's going to look a little weird, that's normal. And it's probably because you didn't put a slice in Vinterp, so make sure you hide this guy real quick. So click on it, and then click hide/show. Now you can see how it looks like a storm. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Yours won't look like this in the beginning. This is way higher resolution. This is just my simulation I'm currently doing. But obviously this looks kind of weird. It's getting dark when I move it around and stuff. So double click on pseudo color, not the slice, and uncheck lighting. And what I usually do is select my own color palette that I made myself. But you guys can select hot desaturated. It's usually the best looking one. It looks the most like a real radar. But you can always make your own. And you can do that by going in controls and then color table. I'm not going to teach you how to do that in today's video, but you can always learn yourself by looking at tutorials and stuff. Now, if you want all this text on the domain out of here, I see a lot of people complaining about that. So you can go to annotation again. It's under controls, and go to 3D and just uncheck these guys. I usually like to keep the bounding box. That's pretty useful. And yeah. Now that we have our reflectivity showing, usually it will not show anything when you first start your simulation, because it takes a little while for the storm to actually start producing rain. So you guys will most likely just see a random color on here because there's no min and max set. To set a min and max, you can just go in here and the pseudo color again and check these guys. I usually set it to 70 dBz as max. And then make sure the minimum is 0. You gotta make sure these guys are checked. But that'll just keep it stable. If you're doing an animation, if you don't have a min and max set, it'll look like it's flickering a bunch. But that's normal. Now for the Vinterp, which is your velocity, you can hide your DBZ so you can see what this guy looks like. And again, add a slice. So operators, slicing, slice. And just copy the settings from the other one. Z-axis, %, and uncheck project to 2D. And you can draw it and show it. Again, pseudo color, uncheck lighting, and go to your velocity color palette that you made, or you can go and find one that is called difference right here. This guy is the easiest without making one yourself to tell if there's a velocity couplet, because all it is this guy right here. You can see a couplet. It's red and blue next to each other, and that is the easiest way to set up velocity. You can uncheck that if you want. Usually you're not going to see anything here at first if you're running a low resolution. Probably just see a little blob forming, but you just gotta let it cook up for a little bit. CM1 is not instant. You gotta wait for it. You gotta let it cook. If you're running a low res sim, it'll run very fast. So if you want to just see the cloud startup, go to your expressions, controls, expressions, and you can combine variables in here. So you click new, and I'm just gonna name it cloud because that's what it is. And then the definition is gonna be QC. So that's gonna be your regular cloud and water mixture, whatever the heck it is, and plus QI, which is like freezing rain and snow and stuff for your anvil. So click apply and then dismiss, and you can add a contour and then cloud because your expressions will end up being in here. So you just add that. There's one thing we got to do to it. Click on minimum, set it to 0.0001. I know that's a lot of zeros, but trust me, that's how it goes. And then end levels to 1, and then check single and change it to like a cloud color. I would do like this color, and then click apply, and then you can draw it. Sometimes it will take a little bit to load because this is a mesh. But once it does, you will see your cloud. It's not going to look this high resolution again. You should see a little lump at the bottom here starting to form up because as you can see here in this simulation, it does as well. And it should look like a little tiny pancake starting to bubble up. Let me load another frame here for you guys. And then you can see it looks like this. This is normal. It's an updraft nudge. It shoots a bunch of air into the sky and it triggers cloud to form. Once your simulation is at like 2000 time or higher, usually around then the updraft nudge's effects are completely gone and your storm is fueling itself from then on. But yeah, now for if you guys actually do have a tornado and you're just wondering how to show it well in Visit, you can go ahead and add a Z-vort. This just shows the vertical vorticity, and in the contour set a min and max of 0.2 and 0.6, and then end levels to like 3, and then I would do red or orange, red, and pink. This is to show like intensity of it usually. Now once you click apply, you can scroll to your newest frame. Usually this will show no data whatsoever unless you actually have a good amount of rotation. This won't show weak rotation unless you make your minimum a little higher. But as you can see here, this is just the little start of a tornado. This is a lower resolution, but you can still see it here. You can see a little vortice coming out of the ground there. Turn on reflectivity, and you can see it's right where the hook is. Matches right up, and it does look pretty cool there. But that's pretty much it for Visit. If you guys want to export it as an animation, all you really have to do is pretty simple. Show what you want to show. What's on screen will be in the animation, not all this UI, but in this guy right here. So you can go ahead and save movie under file, new simple movie. Make sure it's PNG or whatever the heck you want. I always do PNG, and then you can change it to the resolution you want, but you don't have to. You can click this guy right here once you're done configuring everything. Click next, and you can choose all this stuff. Frames per second does not matter when you have it set to PNGs. Don't worry about that. You just set your first frame, your last frame, and then once you click next, you save it where you want it to be, save the file name, and then once you continue that, it will bring up a command prompt and start saving the PNGs. And then what you would do is bring all those PNGs into an editing software, group them all together, speed it up, export it, and then you'll have your animation. But that's pretty much it for Visit. If you have any questions in the comments, please let me know. But now we're going to move on to Vapor because that is really cool and it lets you visualize stuff a lot better than Visit does. I'll leave a link for this in the description as well, but once you're here, go ahead and click download Vapor GUI, and then for Windows right here. Once you download it, it should take a little bit to install, but this is what it should look like. Make sure it's selected netcdf right here because that's what CM1's files are formatted in. And go select files and select all the files you have. So just like go through, select all of them. But if you just want to view one, I don't really recommend it. It's kind of cool to have all of them in there at once. But just if you want to view one, click on one of them, click open. Shall load it in. You got your little box here, and go ahead and add your slice 2D data as well from right here. It's a little plus guy, but it's important to add these guys first because the volumetrics really don't like being overlaid by these, and it's just not really good like that. So once you have your 2D stuff here, you can add a volume. For now, I'm just going to do QC, because as you guys know, that's just a cloud. It's going to show the bottom of the storm, not the top. But if you want to show the top, you would include QI as well. For expressions for visit, it's a little different. You just go to tools and then Python variables, and you click new, and we'll do like cloud, and we include QC and QI. Click new again, name it the same thing, and then it's just QC plus, or no, cloud equals QC plus QI. There you go. That's all you need to do. Once you have it named, it's just the name of what you named it equals and then the variables you want to combine. So click save, and then here I'll switch it to cloud. It'll be at the bottom here. Don't need to worry about the color mapped variable. It's just the variable name that you need to change. Now, once you select this and click the check mark, it's gonna be a big blob. It's not gonna look normal, but really you just gotta go to the appearance tab, and on the transfer function, you just bring the guy or the little node with the most, like the spike of blue right here down all the way. And I usually like to bring this guy over as well. It fills out the storm a little bit more. Once you have it loaded, you should be able to see somewhat of a storm structure if you've let it run for a decent amount of time. But again, guys, it's not going to look like this. This is extremely high resolution. And this is a good view of the outer domain here. As you can see, it starts to cut off and get really low resolution out. That's normal. But the bigger the inner domain, the more accuracy you're going to get with these simulations. But I did this to view the overshooting tops because they're pretty interesting. Now over here, you can up the quality like I did to 16x with the sampling rate multiplier. You can mess around with all this stuff, volume density, lighting as well. This guy slider to the left, it's going to get more intense, and then to the right, it just gets rid of some of the weaker stuff. You can just mess with this guy, and it hides and shows values of the data. Now, if you want a different color, you guys can change it by clicking on these guys, or double-clicking and adding a new one. But you can also go on here, you can save the color map, you can load it, or you can load a built-in one. There's a bunch of different ones you can choose from. You can save transfer function stuff. Now, if you want to show your slices and stuff, it's a bit different than visit. You check it, you go to geometry, check this guy, and just bring the C slider all the way down, and then make sure your end samples are all the way up so it doesn't look very low quality. But you can see it's loaded here. You can mess with the transfer function again. As you can see, there's a spike in blue here, and that's because the background is blue. There's so much of it. So say I wanted to get rid of it and just show the storm, then I would bring this node down, and boom, here you go. And of course, you can also show your storm on top of that. Now, if you want to clip parts of the storm and not show all this ugly stuff, you can literally just do it in here manually. I did that on the DBZ slice, not the cloud, so that's my fault. But you can also just do it with the numbers. It's easier. So you would do half of your domain number. So my inner domain's 40 kilometers in this simulation. So I'd do 20 on here. Boom, and it cuts off that part. And then negative 20, negative 20, or not negative, 20. So now I have a perfect box only showing the high resolution stuff, and that's very useful. I cut off a lot of parts of the storm to show important stuff. Now, I forgot to say, but the movements in Vapor are a little different than in Visit. You can shift click plus left mouse button to move around like this. To zoom in, you don't use a scroll wheel. You actually hold right click and then move your mouse up and down. And then of course, just to move the camera around, you use your left click like you would in pretty much any other software. Now for the 2D data, you can load a bunch of different stuff that you can't on the slice. So that's why this one's useful. So like SWS2, this guy basically is the wind swath path. So every little bit of wind gets put on here and does not get deleted. If you just want to show the wind, like the wind swath, then you can just do the one without the two. And there you go. There's also SWS2. So this is the vortice swath. So it shows the bottom of the vortice. When it's touching the ground, it leaves a trail. But that's as simple as it is. But the next little thing here is exporting the animation, because I know some of you guys will probably want to make an animation of it. And all you have to do is go to the export tab, and there's a bunch of useful stuff here. You can change the perspective, and you can change your time step. So say if you had more than one frame, like I have only one frame in here right now. If you had more, you could go through them like this, and you just switch it to PNG, select your resolution, and then export it as a time series range if you have multiple frames, or just current frame if you have one frame. But yeah, it's super easy to make a little animation in Vapor. But usually you want to use Vapor as the last thing, because you can't keep reopening, or you can't keep reopening it to reload more frames into it like you can in Visit. So that is a bit of an annoyance, but for now, just go ahead and use Visit until you're done with the simulation. Then you can load it all into Vapor and make a little animation of it. But I did miss one last thing here. That's a convenience thing, really. When you have all your frames in here and the simulation is still running while you have Visit open, once it makes a new frame, you can click Reopen, and then a new one will pop up on the timeline. You don't have to reload anything into it. You just click Reopen, and then it will automatically put the next frame in for you. But only if you have more than one frame out of your CM1 grouped up in here, because if you don't, like say there's only one frame in here instead of this green thing that's showing them all grouped up, then it won't load them in. It has to be in this little group here. But usually, once you have your CM1 working and it's all good, it's all going right, make sure you put it in your biggest drive, or the only drive you have, because it does tend to take up a lot of space when you're running these sims. But when you're done with them, you can always delete all the frames after. Or if you really don't have a lot of space, you can just set a really high time step or have the simulation running and delete the frames as it's going, so it doesn't take up a lot of space, and only save frames that are really good. But just to show you guys how you guys would do it, I'm gonna run a very low resolution sim and get it all into Visit and show you what it should look like to make sure you guys are doing everything correctly. Now I'm gonna take this 300 meter as an example and replace my name list. But I'm gonna go down here, and once I have the 300 meter in here, I'm just gonna change some things here because I don't want my inner domain that small. It's just too small. So I'm just gonna go in PowerShell again, and I'm going to do the same commands, grab this guy, set it to these right here, and it's just gonna start up, and I'm gonna leave it running. Alrighty, I'm gonna stop it here because it's been a few minutes, and I'm gonna close it. Now we have a few frames here, 23 of them, each being 200 megabytes. It's pretty normal for this pre-compiled CM1. Now the restart files, if you just stopped it and you don't really plan on restarting from that point, you can just delete them. I usually delete them because these smaller sims I don't really continue. Now let's go into Visit real quickly. First I'm gonna copy this right here because I need to put it into Visit. So I open it here. Just gonna paste it in the path, and you can see right here 23 files. I'm just going to add my pseudo color and my vinterp. Now this is only around 700 time into the simulation, so it's not that much. I would realistically let that go on for quite a bit longer, maybe 10-20 minutes, and probably reach to the point where I want. But let's continue adding our slices here. Now you can save this here like as a file, so you can save the session and it will start off where you left. As long as you have the frames there, what I usually do is have all my settings and everything set up and then save it as a blank thing with nothing in here. I can basically just have all my settings, everything as soon as I start up without having to set everything. So that's definitely what you guys should do if you continue doing this. So I'm gonna draw this here. I'm gonna hide this one because it messed up. We're gonna go to frame 23. Obviously there's nothing here. We're at time 660, so that's normal. So I'm just gonna skip to showing the velocity here. Let's get this set up. Same thing. And we're going to make sure this is all set up as well. We're gonna show the difference. So this is normal here. You can see this is where the updraft nudge is, so it's going to create a lot of wind at the surface here. You can hide that, and we can make our cloud. So expressions, you don't have to do this. You could just add QC and QI in here manually, but I like to have this already set up. So I'm going to click new and name it cloud, and QC plus, and just click apply. And then we're going to add that as a contour. Mess with the settings a little bit, 0.2001. And as you can see, we have our little tiny cloud here. It's just starting off, so realistically this is probably not how a storm would form in real life, but this is just getting it started. Once it's past 1,000 or 2,000 time, it'll start really looking like a normal storm, and it'll start fueling itself basically. But from now on, it should look like this little guy. And if CM1 was still going, making frames, you could just click reopen as it's running, and it would put the next frame into the slider here. You could go a bit further, but as you can see, starting to bubble up here, and that's completely normal what it's looking like. So that's what it should look like for you guys if you're doing 300 meter, because obviously you can still get good storm structure if that's what you're after. That's what I would do for my first sim. I would focus on storm structure, maybe a little bit of a wall cloud or something to form, but not a tornado, because at this resolution you're not going to see it. The minimum resolution for a tornado is probably 200 meter or 150. but you really start seeing tornadoes at like 125 meter, 100 meter. So if you guys follow what I did to set up a custom name list, you guys can set that up for your preferences, your PC specs, everything. But I will leave a link in the description for a website that shows what every little setting does. You guys can go ahead and look at that if you are confused with some of the settings. But I just need to keep this simple for you guys. I might make another tutorial going over a lot of complicated stuff for people that really want to get into this. But that'll be later on. So for now, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it works for you. Make sure to tell me in the comments if it works. And I appreciate it if you like and sub.